Good morning, everybody. This is going to be our introduction to Microsoft Excel. This is session 2. Let's dig in. And really, we are going to really dig into Excel. If you missed this last time, you can check out the videos on the Parks and Rec YouTube channel. But we are, again, building on what we had last time. We kind of got to see a lot of the elements of the basics of Excel. And because Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel are completely different, but they have a lot of the same elements as you saw last time. We're going to continue on in session 2 with a bunch of other things. And again, we're just building up from here, just the real basic stuff. But they're really key things that I think you'll be able to use as you grow in Microsoft Excel. So let's get underway real quick. And make sure we're good to go. Here we go. All right. As usual, for our Zoom etiquette, for everyone to hear, please stay muted during the presentation. This presentation will be recorded for training purposes and for the future use for the public. And as always, make sure to jot down your questions. And at the conclusion of this training, we will go over your questions and anything that you may have wanted to go back and see. So we'll be happy to do that at the end. And when we do get to after the time for the Q&A, that is the end of the training. So we will move forward here. An overview of today. So let's start out and say we have 3 big things, and the bulk of our presentation today is going to be a lot on that, the formatting and find and replace. I did want to touch a little bit on this first one, the introduction to headers and footers. Now you may have heard of headers and footers before, and because they are very common in the Microsoft platforms. You will see headers and footers again in Excel. And one of the great things about headers and footers is you can then distinctly label your different sheets and workbooks with a, like you say, the header at the top. And we'll go over that today to let you see, where you can insert those things in your spreadsheets. We're also going to talk today a little bit about find and replace command. This is a very powerful tool that can be used in Excel. Because Excel uses a lot of numbers in these cells that we talked about, the intersection of rows and columns. That find and replace, once you have a lot of data in there, this command actually comes to be a very powerful tool to make sure that you have what you want in your document. So we're going to talk a little bit about find and replace today. And this, again, this is probably a favorite of a lot of the enthusiasts of Microsoft Excel. So that's why I want to touch base on that today. And then we're going to look at the formatting side of it. And this one will be a very key presentation to kind of help you do a little bit of kind of styling, kind of like what we did in Microsoft Word with the styling and stuff. This kind of part will be focused more on the Excel side and how you can format the cells to make it work for you. So that's going to be our overview of today. I think you're really going to enjoy the presentation, and we will go ahead and get underway with our stuff. So first, let's talk about headers and footers. And again, this has a similar fashion to our other Microsoft platforms, but it's also a little bit different too, and you will be able to find it in the menu real easily once we go through it. Headers and footers. So now, headers again usually contain information like a book title, chapter title, even the author's name. It's that heading at the top, and then when you get ready to print a document, that information usually will print at the top of the page or at the bottom of the page, and that's what we're focusing in today. And like you see here, this is again on the insert tab. Now you remember back on the insert part of it, we had the home, the insert page layout, those tabs that were at the top. Now those ribbons that you see here on the bottom, they go all the way across here. And like I said, I can highlight this again. This right here is your ribbon, okay? And that alone will then allow you to have all those different options to do. Let's see if I can get that. That off or whatever. Well, maybe not. That's okay. We'll leave it there for right now. But again, as you can see here, this is again that ribbon, and right here in the you see kind of grayed out, and I made it a little bit bigger for you, is the header and footer side. And this again is where you can edit stuff, where you can put it right here at the top, like for instance, you can see at the top of the page here that you would be able to have text and stuff right up here above where it said header and footers. And the same thing with the footer part of it, you can put stuff way down at the bottom as well. This is in addition to your document. If you want somebody to know, if there's several different tabs, several different of these sheets that you're going to have in Excel, you can then include those in your header and footer. And footers are usually where you can put the document name or the sheet name. So you can do all that in the footers and headers. So again, I just wanted to touch a little bit about this because this is a very similar aspect that you will see in all the Microsoft platforms. But here in the insert menu, you can go in and add headers and footers specifically to your document. That's really, really good for you. So I just want to touch base on that. Like I say, the footers, usually are carried the page numbers. If you have multiple pages on this in your workbook, and then you're able to have multiple sheets, you can allow the footer to put the page numbers in there, and that will help you kind of organize your document when it prints. So that's something you can also keep in mind as well. But again, this menu though, this is one thing that we kind of wanted to touch base on right here at the beginning. And again, you can then find these in the insert menu, and then right up here, headers and footers. Again, we won't touch a whole lot on today, but I wanted to make you aware of where that is. And you can amend it, and you can put whatever text and stuff you want when you get ready to print it. So again, headers and footers is kind of the first part of this. And here's another example as well. Now you will see on here, on the header, this is what it'll look like when you pull it up. You can then use it is broken up by thirds. Really, you can go either the left side, you can click in the middle, or you can click on the right and then add your text in there. In this again, oops, sorry. And then we had you'll see the actual spreadsheet there. It'll give you the contents of that. And then the footer's the same way. You can put stuff in there and allow yourself to add whatever elements. Now, one thing, actually, I kind of wanted to go ahead and I didn't think about putting this as a live feed, but I think I'm going to do that today. So let me do this. I'm going to actually switch screens real quick to show you what that will look like. Just a moment here. Let me get my Excel spreadsheet on. So we have an Excel spreadsheet here. And this is, again, what we talked about last week is just the basics. When you look at here, we were looking at this insert menu. Okay, there we go. And right over here in the corner, let me move this over here. You also have your headers and footers. So now to give you an example of what we were looking at, just like I said, you have the headers and stuff you can do up here. You can put text in here like, this is going to be the Michael's favorite spreadsheet. Okay. And then that's in the center if you wanted to. And you also have lots of options as well. You can go in here and you could actually go right back in here to the home and stuff. And if you wanted it to be bold in the header, you can do that as well. You have a few little options that you can do, inside the header. And most of that other stuff you'll have to do in the main document. But you can, if you wanted to, you can make it bold. And again, there's other things in here. And see, whenever that does come up, it comes up with the design ribbon where you then can add a bunch of different things. And one other thing too, and then what you can do, you can click off of that. And this is really how it's going to look whenever you do print it. Now at the bottom, you also have the footers, okay? And in the footers, one of the great things too, and back in this design menu that comes through here, there it goes. You can actually add a bunch of different things. Sometimes a lot of people will put in here, they put sometimes the current date and time. You can actually put this here. They give you the little code that they'll put in here. And when it prints, it will actually put the date and time at the bottom of your footer. So you can put that, you can put a space there and then a space there for date and time. You can also, because you have maybe say, for instance, you had multiple sheets, I'm going to add a couple more sheets here. See how I did it right there? I actually got off of it and you now can see what it'll print like. But if I wanted to say this is Michael's sheet, okay, so now I get back on the footer and now I want to go back into design. And you'll see right here that we have this thing called sheet name. You can now include this at the bottom. And so now, and tab, like I say, these are all, the sheet names are also known as tabs. And you can now include this sheet name at the bottom because whenever it prints, you'll then get to see that there are multiple tabs and then you can know which sheet it is. It's just another identifier. So that's another thing you can do. And see right there, I just clicked off of it and there it goes. There's Michael's sheet. So that's another thing you can add. And then other times, people sometimes put the file name or the file path. There's things you can do there as well. Or you can do what a lot of people do, page numbers. You can put a page number in there. And so you can add the page number on the side as well. And see, here's what one thing that you may want to consider, and I invite you to think of it this way. when you build, if you're going to be doing multiple tabs like this, like Michael's sheet, you could do Michael's sheet number 2, 3, and so on. One thing I highly recommend in this is that you build one of these sheets with everything you want, and then you can duplicate it. And what I'm saying about this, and just by example real quick, if I already added all of these things in here with the page number, the time and date, and my sheet name, I can actually go in here and copy this sheet to another one. So in here, and I want to make sure to hit this checkbox, create a copy, and it's going to ask me in this workbook before this other sheet. So I wanted to put it before sheet 2, right after this sheet. And when I do that, I'll hit this, and there comes a duplicate. You do this every time, you actually keep all the settings the same inside each of the tabs. And then you can just do anytime you're ready to print, it'll have all of this stuff pre-done for you. So that's what's really cool. That's what's so powerful about the spreadsheets is that you can do this in Word too, but having the headers and footers set before you do anything, when you get ready to duplicate that across tabs, then everything is already there, and then you don't have to redo this again. So kind of keep that in mind whenever you do the headers and footers. Set up one tab first, like this one here. Put everything you want to in. If you want to put the title in, and then like at the bottom, you want to put what time that you're printing it, the name of the sheet, and maybe a page number if there's going to be multiple of these, then that's what I would recommend. But they are, again, very powerful tools that you can use, when you're working on your spreadsheets. Okay, so again, that was the headers and footers. And again, the live example, I just wanted to kind of add that because I think that's important to see where we went to on this. But again, that's where you can multiple sheets, and you can actually create all of these, going forward. And again, every time you do one of these and copy it, all that stuff will appear. Okay, so we kind of touched on the first part of this, which was the headers and footers. Let me get back in here, and we will go back to the presentation real quick. Okay, so headers and footers. Now you got a kind of an example of how that works. Now let's switch gears. Let's look at find and replace command. Again, very, very powerful tool for those enthusiasts in Excel. Once you get into this and you're doing lots of different data and it gets so big, this becomes a very, very popular command that helps you be consistent across your documents. So here, let's get started and look at this. Now, find and replace, again, when you're working with rather large spreadsheets, it is a very common task need to find a specific value. And again, fortunately, this find and replacing is, makes this a little bit of a simpler task because, spreadsheets are very daunting. They don't have to be, but they sometimes end up being daunting because there's so much data. And then you add all of this stuff together, and sometimes you're wanting formulas, and which we're going to talk in the future about some of the basic math features of Excel. That I want you to, and that'll be in session 3, we'll talk about basic math and some of the formulas that you can use to put these together. I'll actually put together a spreadsheet that we'll do a little chart on how we can make this all work. But again, the find and replace, though, we're going to go through here, and this is kind of the meat of the presentation here, because I think you're going to see how we're going to have a couple of examples on the slideshow here that will allow you to see how you can put this data to good use. But again, we're starting with find and replace. All right. Oh, I need to click back on here. Okay, there we go. So first, again, where this find and select is, this is actually back on the home part of it. So on the home ribbon, you're going to see here all the way at the end, there's this what we call find and select, or you can also know as find and replace. So again, the newer versions now have find and select on it, but you'll also find replace just in there. So again, you'll select the column or range of cells. And remember, a range of cells, again, is a group of cells. The cell is the intersection of a row and a column. And then you've got a range, which is a group of cells. So if you highlight, like we saw in the first one, you highlight a group of cells, then that's what they call a range. And that's what we're talking here. You select the column or a range of cells you want to analyze, or click any cell to search the entire worksheet, okay? You'll click home, this find and select, and then you can find the stuff, and you also have control commands as well. We won't go into much of that today. There are a lot of videos, though, that will allow you to do keyboard commands, and a lot of folks in Excel do like this because it is quick, but you don't have to. There's multiple ways to do things in Excel. commands on the keyboard are one, and again, plenty of videos on those. But we're focusing more, again, by clicking and being able to see these menus and how to get around. That's going to be important. But again, clicking home, find and select, and then we're going to then go in and we'll work with the keyboard function for now. So when you go into the find and replace here, you're going to get this kind of box right in here. Now, documents, you can have all kinds of data in here, and you can actually, if you're wanting something else in replace of, and this is exactly what it's doing, it tells you find and replace. You're finding one element, you're finding one piece of your data that you want to replace with another word, for instance. So in this case, they're using the word peacock, okay? So they want to find the word peacock. So in the text box, we'll type the text or number you want to search for in the find what. And that's what you see right here in this box. And when it comes up for the find and replace, you're going to find the word peacock. Finding what? We're looking for the word peacock. So that's, again, what you're looking for in this text box. And then you're going to, when you're finding that, you'll then go to find next. Now, when you click find next to locate, it'll locate the first occurrence of the value in that search. So whenever you hit find next, it's going to find the first word peacock in one of those cells. When you click find next again, it will find your second one, and so on. We're going to talk about the difference here about find next and find all. And we may have already kind of figured out a little bit, but again, it is important though to know that in find next, you're just going to the next value in there, just the next one. Now you probably wonder find all, okay? So find all, when you select the find all and we look for that word peacock, again, you look and find all of the list of occurrences. So we're looking at all of them now. So it's Excel will list everything all the way down of what the word peacock and where it is in your document. So it lists that information, and again, in any book or any sheet that you got, in the cell where it is located. And you'll have to click on that item to be taken to that cell. And when you do that, like you see in the example here, you can go to a certain spot inside of Excel, and then you can go to this next portion. But with find and place, finding specific or all occurrences of a value in a spreadsheet is useful and can save a lot of hours. And I'm very serious. I've done a lot of projects with Excel, and especially one on our recent software that we're trying to move data from one database to another. But if you using find and replace, again, can save a lot of hours of scrolling through. And again, if you want to change the occurrences of the value with something else, you then will click that replace, and it will replace that value. You can change if you wanted, say for instance, you want rooster instead of peacock. You could actually hit replace, and rooster will go into whatever spots you want it to. So again, you can pick anything in any cell, and you can find and replace it. You can see now why that's a powerful tool. And if you have a lot of data and you start kind of seeing that maybe this is a little redundant, I want to replace it with something else, you can do it either specifically with one occurrence, or you could do it with all of them. Again, you have choices, and that's the best part about these. You have choices of whether you could do one thing or you could do all of them. So again, keeping that in mind with find and replace, you can go back to these cells and you can change the data if you need to if you want it to say something else, you could find something and then replace it with something else. So now we're looking at the replace box, okay? And we kind of I'm jumped ahead just a little bit, but when you saw what it said find what, find the word peacock, okay? And then you want to replace it with another one where this next box replace with. And you want to, in this case, we're just going to talk about, we're using the last Johnson, I believe is what they have here. So we want to change peacock to Johnson. All right. And you remember, we have a few of these little tools down here, like the replace, find all, find next. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that right now. Okay, so we're looking at replace. So like I told you, when you have replace, you're changing each occurrence one at a time, all right? Replace by itself is one at a time. If you see the replace all, which is right here on the bottom of the page, you see replace all, replace, find next. Replace all changes everything. So if you give one word and you want to replace it with this other word and hitting replace all, it's going to do everything. not just one, but everything. If you just hit the replace button and you tell it one cell, it's just going to do the one cell at a time until you tell it next. So I wanted to make that distinction here, is that replace does one thing at a time. Replace all will change everything that's listed in that in the search that you're wanting to replace with that word. So keep that in mind. And there's some other useful things too, which we'll just touch on real quick. But you can also match. You can do it across the workbook as well. The find and replace, again, like I say, very powerful tool. You can then go in and you can drill down even further. You can match it even further within the workbook, or you can do certain rows or certain columns, or the formulas too, which we'll talk a little bit more in session 3. But again, you can you can do it more specifically to match it with, all the specific things you're looking for, or just to match the entire cell contents that you're asking for. So again, you can get more specific on things too, and that's another thing that you have in here. I just want to highlight that. But those options can help narrow down your search criteria. It ensures you that find and replace, corrects the occurrences of the values you're looking for. So again, you have, really, it's all at your fingertips, really. You can start at going all relative to the whole document, or you can get to specific data. If you have a certain chart that you're working with and you wanted to replace just a little portion of it, the same principle applies. You just do it on a smaller scale. But find and replace is, again, very, very powerful, can be used in so many ways to help you, to be more concise in your document. And again, change one thing to another and replace it with another thing. Again, that's a very, very powerful part of Microsoft Excel. Now let me move on here to the next one. Okay, so we're going to move into formatting. So now we looked at find and replace. That, again, as one section of Excel that you're really, if you get that down, you can do just about anything across the document. But that's a key command that I'm really wanting to highlight in this section, because when you put a bunch of data together, you do want to make sure that it's consistent. And if you don't like something, you can find that actual word, replace it with something else. That's the whole goal on this one. So formatting. Now this part also is I think this is kind of the fun part of it, that you can kind of see what you can do with the data that's there. So we're going to look at just another sample of what you can do with formatting. So again, in formatting, as you can see on the page here, you do have your home ribbon. This looks very familiar, as most of y'all remember, that we had in Microsoft Word. This looks very similar to what you saw there. Same thing in Excel. You've got this now where you have your basic commands, your basic formats of fonts, sizing, how to alignment when it comes to merging stuff. You can merge and center certain things here too. Again, so when you think about this, styling a spreadsheet, it does help to know that you have these tools that you can use to add style to it. Basically, what these tools do is help change that look of the spreadsheet. So again, you have the same kind of, we're looking at just a little bit differently now with the spreadsheet, but it's the same principle really across Microsoft platforms. Let's see. Oh, I had an extra slide. Oops, sorry. Let me see here. Oops. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. So I just went backward. Okay, so formatting. So what we're going to talk about today is that in formatting, you can change the looks of those cells. This at one point was a spreadsheet that was basically plain. Yeah, you see on here, there's a lot of different elements that we're looking at. We're looking at some stuff that's underlined, stuff that has different colors, have other ones that have a heading that's taking an overview of that section. And then you also have a multiple of those things with some of those actual phrases. So again, the combination of bold, italicizing, and underlining, it makes this example here easier to read, which is the whole point of formatting. You want it to be readable. And you want if somebody else is looking at the document, that they can at least, if you want certain things to stand out, that's what the formatting will help you do. Again, we're going to look at this example to show you, but this is kind of what we're going to be using this little thing, this little, again, finance tracker, that is just, it gives you kind of an example of how you can format this document a little bit. Let's see here. I don't know why it keeps going back to this. Let's see here. Okay, so we had that. There we go. Okay. So let's look at borders. So again, in that menu, we had a bunch of different things in this home ribbon. And one of those is actually the borders section of it. Now in borders, which again, these help again separate and they help to segment your data and wall it off from other sections of data in your spreadsheet. Again, you can in the spreadsheet you have each of these cells can be turned into little sections if you wanted to. And again, you can first off by starting to highlight the cells that you want and apply a border. And to do that, let me go back into my makeshift spreadsheet real quick. And we get it here. Here we go. Let me get off of this real quick. And let's see, let me get out of this, back to normal. There we go. So again, we got the border piece here, and I got Michael Shee here. So I'm going to put some data in here. Movies, food, drive-in. Oh, that sounds fun, doesn't it? Drive-in movie. And then we can have 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So now we got in here, we got these different cells in here, right? So we've got numbers on here. We've also got some categories: movies, food, and drive-in. But we can also make it where we can add some different borders on here. So back on here on this menu, back on the home ribbon, we looked right here at the different ribbons and the borders. You can do a bottom border. We can just put an underline under there, a top border, a left and right. So you can do it all different types of directions. You can keep it as a no border, which is what it is right now, or you can make it an all border. So if we did the all border, for instance, look what it did. It put itself right here. It gave all those cells a box. Basically what you saw right there is it just made a box for everything. But it doesn't have to be that way. That's just one element. So on these borders, I could actually turn it off again, just like that. I can also go in here. I can make it a big box, a big bold box, just like that. And if I wanted to separate it, I could go back in here and do like a left border here, and I can have a separator. So you can see where the borders kind of come in. This is just a real simple example, but you can see how powerful it can be. If you have a lot of data, this is where you can start, again, formatting it to make it look readable. This is one way you can do it. You can use the borders. But again, that is one thing. When you see this, and again, I can zoom in a little bit. So yeah, you can do these. You can do all of these in here. Like that, no borders takes everything off. You can also put out here. And then one other thing you can also do when we talk about numbers and formulas next week, we'll use some of these other ones down here, the double bottom borders that they use, for calculations and stuff. That's one thing that they use them for. But again, you can put these borders in any place right here and you can extend it out. But again, great tool that you can use for that. Okay, let me go back here real quick. Come on. There it goes. Let's see here. Okay. So again, we got to touch on borders, and you now have seen an example of how that can work. Now we're going to look at more. We're going to get a little bit more with the formatting and styling. You can see here, this is an example of a sales team review. And you see that we kind of have a bunch of different columns of data, also some row headings as well, like salesperson, the region it's covered, the sales from February 2017, and also the cost of those sales. So we kind of got some data. We're going to kind of look at the formatting of these. This is kind of what you'll see in a lot of different, when you see a lot of these different spreadsheets, this is how it would look. Again, adding the top and the bottom borders like we saw here, this all makes a great way for it to stand out. That's something that you can make it really stand out well. So you have that top and that double bottom border style. And again, this is ideally particular for financial data. And you do see that occasionally when you're doing spreadsheets. And a lot of our accountants and other bean counters, that's just what they use all the time. They put these spreadsheets together for their budgets. And they use they formulate everything to where it will total up very, very nicely. And some format them well, and some other ones they just kind of keep it plain text, which is fine. But you can also, sometimes you're presenting to a board of directors meeting or something, and for a company, and you'll want this stuff to stand out very nicely. Usually that stuff is usually public too, so it's important that it looks nice and presentable. And those borders help make that really nice and presentable, along with other things like you saw, that style it and make it look nice. And then you can also add weight and color as well, the weight of the lines, how heavy and dense are those lines going to be. What we saw there earlier was actually pretty thin lines, but you can make them bigger and make them heavier. Bold them, they can really stand out. So we have those kind of things too. Another thing is shading. Now, you saw those borders before. And matter of fact, let's just go back here. You'll see here, we actually see the shading in that they made this a very, like a midnight blue type color. And this really helps the heading stand out. So that's very important to see. But you use the fill option, which is the little paint bucket that you see here. And you can add color to any of these cells anytime and to make them stand out. And again, it's just picking a color that you can apply to a background of a cell. And to shade that cell, you click and highlight any of those cells like you saw the row headings across. And then you can add that shading into it. Just like you see here. This is just, you got the page headings or the column headings here. And then you can go in and make this where it just stands out just a lot better. And then we got alignment. Excuse me for just a second, get a water. Okay, so we got the alignment. We're going to talk, and this again refers to how that text and the numbers are going to be oriented in that cell. So again, you can either do it left, you can do it to the center, to the right, all of those things you can see here. And it also gives you the part where you can do it from the top and to the bottom as well. So there's lots of different options on the alignment part of it. But by default, the content is aligned to the left. And when you have large data sets, you might want to tweak it a little bit just so it'll be readable. But again, you can see in here that we got the alignment options here in the home ribbon, right next to all of your fonts and as far as sizing as well. It's all right here, right next to each other. And then kind of review what we saw before, as you probably remember, that spreadsheet, like we said, talked about rows and columns, okay, which is known as a cell. Rows are ruled by that horizontal, straight across. Columns are up and down. They split, vertical lines, and they usually have letters. Rows usually have numbers. Columns usually will have letters. And usually you'll refer to them as either like A1 or B1. That's how you refer to a cell inside Excel. Now, you probably were wondering what all of these little lines are. The spreadsheet is made as grid lines, okay? Grid lines in Excel are one of the defining features of a spreadsheet. So when you see grid lines, usually you're in Excel or in some sort of program that's very similar to that. Again, it makes it easier to follow the data across the screen into a cell. And these lines, again, are imaginary. They look like you can't print them that way too, but it makes it where these lines are imaginary, only visible on the screen. And sometimes you may not want those grid lines. You still want the data there, but you don't want all the grid lines. So there is options in there to do that. And to do that, let me just show you real quick that you can turn them off in the print features. So back in my main part of Excel again, you'll see here the spreadsheet is itself basically a bunch of grid lines, okay? But we don't necessarily always want to print those. So you can change that around. In your page layout here, you can go in here to the page setup. And you also have a thing for sheet, okay? By default, it does not print grid lines, but you can do that if you want to. You'll see right here when you're getting ready to print, you can either print them with grid lines or not. But again, by default, it will not be there. It won't be engaged. It won't be activated. So you can turn them on if you want them to print those spreadsheet cells. You can print them if you want. But when you open the program and you're just wanting to print something, that's going to be turned off by default. So I just wanted to show you that, just so in case when you're getting ready, if you don't want all these grid lines, you don't have to worry about that when you print. But if you want to turn them on, that's where you have to go to turn them on. So I just wanted to kind of show you that part because it's very easy to forget about those as well. Okay, let me get back in the presentation here. So again, that's just another great feature of Excel is the grid lines, and that's how you can turn them on and turn them off. Okay, so then we have conditional formatting. So what if the format of this cell can be changed based on the data that's inside it? Now think about this for a second. Now you have condition. We're talking about conditional formatting. Say for instance that you have, if for instance we did a real simple math problem, and if we wanted to say 2 plus 1 is equal to 3, and in this case, if we know the number 3, which is the answer to that, 2 plus 1 is 3, if we know that's correct, we would want that cell to change to a green color. That's what we call conditional formatting. If it was 2 plus 1 equal 4, we make it red because that's incorrect, right? I mean, that's going to be the math problem. 2 plus 1 is going to equal to 3. That's what's correct. But if you had by chance accidentally get a number 4, that's not correct, and we want that to show red. So you can take simple things like that and make the cells change color or change to a different style if you like. And again, Excel has a lot of different styles that you can switch to. Again, this feature is built into Excel, and that again is called conditional formatting. And it's easier to get started more than you think it is. That's just kind of an example, though, that you can take a simple math problem, and if you calculated it and that was the right answer, you can make it the whole cell either green or even green text. You have a few options when you do that. But again, you can imagine this though to highlight the top and bottom values in your cell, and just to make it easy to visually scan your data and look for key indicators. So if there's particular data, for instance, if you looked at like a membership numbers at a facility and you're wanting to know, I have a benchmark that I need to hit. If that number was by chance coming closer to that benchmark, you would probably want to highlight that, right? They're saying, hey, we're about to hit our mark. Or if the data is not, if it's at a certain range outside of where you're looking for, you could have it another color like red. It's like, or even orange to caution you. It's like, hey, we're getting a little out of control here, or we haven't hit the mark. We need to be look at this. So that's how you can use these cells to automatically change colors based on criteria that you set it up to do. Conditional formatting is very popular. It's real popular with a lot of folks. And depending on what you're doing, you can define the criteria that cell needs to be and have it turn to a different color, or you can do something else for you. And this is kind of the example we can look at here. So on the left side here is just your plain document, okay? Looking back at that sales team review. So you have the names of the salespeople, right? You got your regions and the states that they're in, and then the February of 17 sales numbers, okay? Now you look at the right side, and then you can actually break these down into different categories. You can, if you wanted to, each person can have a different color, or each of these sales have a different color associated to them. So you can turn these into different colors if you want to. Again, some of the different conditions are there. And again, that's what really is nice. So conditional formatting in Excel can really make it easy to virtually scan a set of data and look for trends, okay? So you can make stuff you can define criteria in it and make it, and if something falls within that criteria, you can make it a color. Or if something's outside of that, you can make it another color. That's what conditional formatting is. It will allow you to define cells and change the way it looks to help you, share your case, on Excel. And then again, there's numbers of styles of how you can do conditional formatting in drop-down menus. Each of these applies at a different style of Excel formatting to your cells, but again, they will be adapted based on the cells that you've highlighted. And again, you don't necessarily do the whole page. You can again do specific things if you want. You can take just a certain amount of data and you could actually highlight it and then say, if this number is below 0 or is a greater, or if it's actually above 0, turn it to this color, or some things along those lines. Lots of videos out there about conditional formatting, but I did want to introduce you to this because it does allow you to create some boundaries and create you some criteria that if you're looking for specific things, it will indicate a color for you. And it's very, very helpful when you're doing your presentation. Like I say, here's where it is inside of the menu. Again, it's still in the home menu here. But if you look over here, there's a thing called conditional formatting. Now you can actually highlight the cell rules. You can, top and bottom, certain data. You can do different color schemes too, in different sets. You can set rules for these things. And again, there's lots of videos. I'm just highlighting it today. But this is something that if you do want to put a certain amount of data down, and you want it to have it to change colors when something is approaching that number or is away from that number, then it'll help you indicate, which ones you need to focus in on. So it's another powerful tool, like I say, about Excel. But that's where it is, though, is in the home menu, and then you can go right here to conditional formatting. Wow, we're here at the end now. So in summary, how's everybody doing? Are we getting a thumbs up here? Are we doing all right? All right. So, in summary, today we've introduced you to headers and footers. Now, you just saw again how, in the example, what header footers can do for you. You can identify your documents, by having the timestamp put on there, time and date stamp like we saw. You can put the sheet name on there. You can also put page numbers, as well as a heading on the header part of it. But again, those, whenever it prints, if you have a header and footer in there, it'll print that so you can identify where that information came from. And it's very popular for a lot of different reasons. Some people don't necessarily use it, but it's there just like in Word, and you can add that stuff in there. We also demonstrated how that find and replace command comes into play. And why is that important? Well, I think you saw it today. You can, again, take any kind of data that you want and use, if you don't like a specific thing inside that document and you want to replace it, that's what find and replace does. You find something in there and you replace it with something else. You can be as small and specific as you want, or you could be in the big scheme of things across multiple sheets, multiple workbooks. You can do it all that way. But the find and replace thing is a very, very powerful tool, and you can use that to as small or as big as you want. And then we also discovered the different choices to format those cells across Excel. And you saw today we did a little bit about borders. We also looked at some of the alignment issues. All of those things, as you saw, and going back here, let me go back to the, as you saw, like in here, you have, they've created some of these borders as well. Like that down the bottom, I was talking to you before about how that sales data, we have the top and bottom lines, and see the double lines at the bottom here mean this is the end of the sales totals. So you have one line separating all of your stuff from above, and then you've also got your final sales totals right here, like the $187,603, and then the cost of sales alone for February, $15,406. So those lines of borders do help when it comes to that. So again, that's what I mean by the different borders. And then you had alignment. You also see some of these things are lined up, left aligned, and some are centered. We didn't talk a whole lot about it, but we do have the ability to put a heading like this. When you see sales team review, that actually probably originated in A1 right here. But you can actually, and let me get my highlight tool, you can actually take this A1, and you can bring this all the way across here. And this is what they call merge and center. And again, the merge and center is another feature in the home ribbon, which allows you to then spread your heading across all these columns and expand your row too. So like you see right here, it probably was just an A1 to start, but then you can highlight all of these cells from A1, B1, C1, and D1, and then you can merge it across there, so it's going to spread all the way across your chart, just like that. But that was one thing we didn't really touch on, but it's a very powerful thing that'll make your formatting look really, really nice when you're presenting. Again, that's where that all comes in. And let's see here. So again, we talked about the formats. We talked about how the bold, italicized, how you can use those things to manipulate, the style of it. All of those things are so important when it comes to getting your document ready to print. Again, we had a lot here today. I hope this has been helpful. We are at the conclusion of the training. If you have any other questions for me, then the floor is yours. You can go ahead and unmute at this time.